Hey guys, Button25 here, watching the launch of the Progress 67, I think it is.
Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers is on duty here at this hour, ready for the launch less than 20 minutes from now of the Soyuz 2.1A booster down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan to send a Progress, an unpiloted Progress 67 cargo craft en route to the International Space Station, a 2-day journey with a docking scheduled on Friday morning.
The normal LED is blinking.
You're looking at a balcony view of a camera at the Russian flight control room in Korolyov outside of Moscow, where the Russian flight control team is keeping tabs on the countdown, which will head for the launch of the Progress atop its Soyuz booster just 19 minutes from now. Down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, there is a live view of launch site 31, where the Soyuz booster stands fully fueled. It was fueled several hours ago. The Progress is shrouded in the upper stage, the third stage of the Soyuz booster, ready for an 8-minute, 45-second ride to its preliminary orbit after the Progress itself is separated from the third stage of the Soyuz booster. It will deploy its solar arrays and navigational antennas and begin a series of pre-programmed automated rendezvous burns that will begin a 2-day journey to the International Space Station and a final docking to the aft port of the Zvezda service module on Friday. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The Progress is loaded with 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 52 crew on board the International Space Station. The breakdown of that cargo includes 1,940 pounds of propellant, 51 pounds of oxygen, 53 pounds of air, 926 pounds of water, 3,069 pounds of dry cargo in the form of spare parts and other supplies for the crew on board the orbital outpost. A total of 6,039 pounds loaded into that Progress vehicle, 3 tons of supplies ready to make their way to the International Space Station. The Soyuz booster was fueled several hours ago, about 30 minutes ago. The gantry arms that had enveloped the Soyuz since its rollout to the pad back on Sunday, they were lowered to expose the vehicle. There are 2 sets of ground umbilicals still buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz booster. The first of those 2 umbilicals will fall away, drop back, and be retracted about a minute before launch. The second about 20 seconds before launch. That will initiate the automated engine start sequence that will result in the Progress liftoff. Down in Baikonur, it is a blustery, overcast day with some rain showers. Temperatures about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but the Soyuz is ready to begin its journey just 16 and a half minutes from now. At launch site 31, the integration facility is not far from the launch pad, much closer than it is at site 1 for a manned Soyuz launch. And on Sunday, the Soyuz booster and the Progress vehicle, horizontal on a rail car, was transported a short distance from the integration building to the launch pad. You see in this series of photos courtesy of Roscosmos, the Russian Federal Space Agency. Once the Soyuz booster had reached the launch pad, it was hydraulically lifted into its vertical position on the pad, and those gantry arms that you see there were folded around the vehicle to permit launch pad engineers access to hook up power and fuel lines and data cables to the vehicle for the final 3 days of processing that will lead to its launch just 15 and a half minutes from now.
Give you a picture if you need, because they're going to be used for this particular device only. So it makes pertinent sense to store them here.
Тогда пока забираем свое предложение, дальше посмотрим, может там, где тот прибор находится. Потому что за эту панель сложно заглядывать. светильник там демонтировать.
Ну, для справки мы вот это вот СУБК с прибором 74, оно...
On this progress MS something, but I can't make it out because of how low quality video Roscosmos is providing.
As the countdown continues on track for launch of the Progress vehicle just over 14 minutes from now, on board the International Space Station, the Expedition 52 crew has begun its workday. They are receiving a feed of the launch coverage up on board the station so they can keep tabs of the latest in the series of cargo ships about to take flight on a 2-day journey to the International Space Station. The station is currently flying over the South Pacific at an altitude of 258 statute miles, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. At the time of launch, the station will be flying over the southern Atlantic just to the southeast of Uruguay. You're looking live again at the upper stage of the Soyuz booster. That's the launch shroud within which is the Progress 67 cargo craft, again loaded with 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 52 crew aboard the International Space Station. The flight plan calls for an 8-minute, 45-second ride to orbit for the Progress vehicle. Once it is separated from the third stage of the Soyuz booster, it will deploy its solar arrays and navigational antennas. It will be automatically controlled through pre-programmed commands. Later in the day, there'll be 2 rendezvous burns to increase the altitude of the Progress as it begins its trek toward the station, most particularly to adjust the perigee of its orbit, to raise the perigee of its orbit. Additional rendezvous maneuvers over the next 2 days will bring the Progress into the vicinity of the International Space Station early Friday morning. The Progress, if all goes as planned, will automatically dock to the aft port of the Zvezda service module at 6:42 a.m. Central Time, 7:42 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday morning. The launch milestones that we'll be reporting over the next few minutes after liftoff include first stage separation of the Soyuz booster 1 minute 57 seconds into flight. At that point, the Soyuz and the Progress will be 30 miles in altitude, some 73 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The second stage engines will be firing. They will shut down at about the 4 minute 37 second mark. Second stage separation will follow just a few seconds later, followed by the launch shroud jettison. The third stage engine will fire just in what is called a hot fire maneuver. Basically, the third stage ignites before the second stage shuts down. That's the sequence that Soyuz boosters use for its propulsion of a payload, or in this case, the Progress vehicle, to orbit. If all goes as planned, third stage shutdown will occur at 8 minutes 45 seconds into the flight, followed a few seconds later by the third stage separation. The Progress then will be flying on its own to deploy its solar arrays and its navigational antennas. We're just 11 minutes away now from launch. Everything continues to go as planned with all of the pre-launch activities down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
So you can see the pad here looks a bit slightly different from pad 1, and that the kind of flame trench is smaller. I presume because they had less time to build this pad as opposed to pad 1, which they had a considerable amount of time to build. I honestly don't know. I don't work for Roscosmos. I wish I did, but unfortunately I do not.
Launch Site 31, where there have been 2 manned Soyuz launches recently in the last few years. Manned launches typically occur on Site 1, which is the launch pad from which Yuri Gagarin lifted off on April 12th, 1961 to become the first human to fly in space. This launch site, 31, is more commonly used for Progress resupply launches.
Or unmanned.
And it is about a 45-minute drive or so from Launch Site 1, the two launch pads quite a distance apart from one another. Again, the weather is overcast. We probably will not see the rocket for very long today. Hopefully we'll get real-time animation that is provided from Mission Control in Korolyov after the vehicle is no longer in the field of view.
So SpaceX will shortly begin a rather intense schedule of launches. 3 launches in 2 weeks, two from the Kennedy Space Center and two from Kennedy Space Center.
9 minutes from launch, everything proceeding normally. Onboard systems have been switched to onboard control.
I presume that means the computer is staying in full control of the vehicle.
The next 2 milestones will occur within the next few minutes. That will be the boosters in the first stage, the booster tanks being pressurized for flight to optimize the flow of fuel and add structural support to the rocket on the pad. About a minute and a half before launch, the ground propellant feed will be terminated. Once the Progress reaches the International Space Station on Friday morning for its automated docking to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, it will join another Progress that has been on the station for the past few months, that the Progress 66 cargo craft, which is docked to the Pirs docking compartment on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. You see in this graphic the current configuration of the International Space Station. That Progress 66 craft will remain docked to Pirs until July 20th, when it will undock and be deorbited for a destructive re-entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. And again, Progress 67, as of Friday, will dock to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. You see where it will reside. It is scheduled to remain on the International Space Station at that port until December. T-minus 7 minutes and counting.
Still ready for the launch.
That's a good view of the one of the 2 umbilicals still buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz booster. That umbilical will retract just under a minute before launch. A second umbilical will separate from the booster. That will initiate the automated launch command sequence for the engines on the first stage of the Soyuz booster. T-minus 6 minutes and counting.
And that 6 minutes will be followed by a roughly 10-minute climb into orbit.
Coming up on the T-minus 5 minute mark.
Which means, obviously, 5 minutes to launch.
Ground measurement system is activated.
Some kind of system was activated, but I couldn't make out what system due to the very thick Russian accent.
Inside 5 minutes now to launch. We're coming up on the purging of the fuel lines and the other elements of the rocket engines, purged with nitrogen to fireproof them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer. T-minus 4 minutes and counting. Everything proceeding normally for an on-time launch. The actual launch time will be 4:20 and 13 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:20 in the afternoon in Baikonur at the launch site.
Everything seems to be going nominally, really. No better way of putting it. At least none that I can think of.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. The valves through which evaporated oxygen escapes from the fuel tanks into the atmosphere have now been closed, and that substance now being drained back into the tanks. Standing by for the pressurization now of the fuel and oxidizer tanks, everything proceeding on track. Two and a half minutes until launch.
Booster propellant tank pressurization.
The booster tanks are now being pressurized.
Don't know why that is necessary, because the Soyuz uses gravity to push the fuel into the engine mainly.
The International Space Station flying 258 statute miles over the South Atlantic, moving from southwest to northeast.
I can see progress MS written on the side of the fairing there, in Russian, of course.
Coming up on 1 minute before launch. The automated sequence start for the rocket's functions now underway.
Vehicle to internal power.
Soyuz booster now on internal power, coming up on the 30-second mark. And the first umbilical now beginning to retract from the side of the vehicle. Standing by for engine sequence start, T-minus 10 seconds.
Ignition.
The launch
There we
command
go.
has now been issued. Engine start underway.
You can see there's a lot of smoke.
Turbo
Now the
pumps coming up to
Soyuz.
flight speed.
Now the engine's filling out all 30
Engine
something of them.
turbopumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust.
And liftoff.
There we go.
Liftoff of the 67th Progress resupply vehicle bound on a 2-day journey to the
To the
International
ISS.
Space Station. Roll, pitch, and yaw program in. Booster parameters are all normal.
Parameters are normal.
First stage engine functioning normally.
Space thruster is operating nominally.
The Soyuz booster arcing out to the northeast from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Vehicle is stable.
Engineers
said
at the
his vehicle is
blockhouse at
stable.
Baikonur report that the vehicle is stable. All engine parameters are normal.
Point
That's always good.
013.
1 minute into the flight,
12.
And there's that
20,
live
13.
telemetry
now receiving animation
thing.
generated by telemetry from the vehicle.
And all parameters are normal.
Yes, I presume that's 40.
1 minute 15 seconds into the flight.
I presume that means like 40
All
seconds
parameters are normal.
until
Good first stage engine.
the boosters
First
separate.
stage engine shutdown and separation of the first stage coming at 1 minute 57 seconds into the flight.
Parameters are normal.
One minute 40 seconds into the flight.
The booster parameters are normal.
Booster parameters are normal. Standing by for first stage engine shutdown and first stage
Yes,
separation.
that is so is correct.
Parameters are
So
normal.
1. Yep, booster sep.
Strap-on
Close,
boosters
cross.
have separated.
Can you
I
monitor?
presume that's how many
the
seconds it
vehicle?
is until the first
Side
stage is
pods
chucked
are
away and the second
separated.
stage is ignited.
Vehicle is stable.
Vehicle stable on its second stage engine now. Good engine performance on the second stage. 2 minutes 25 seconds into the flight.
Booster parameters are normal. Control system.
All control systems are reported to be normal from the blockhouse in Baikonur. Once the Progress reaches orbit and separates from the third stage of the Soyuz booster, operation and oversight will be controlled from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow.
Flight on.
The flight proceeding normally, coming up on the 3-minute mark.
All booster control systems and parameters are normal.
Everything reported right down the pike. Everything is normal. All parameters are normal. Vehicle stabilization is normal.
So 1 minute 40 seconds until the first stage is thrown away.
Just over a minute left in second stage performance.
Operating nominally.
Engine performance is nominal. Good reports from the blockhouse at Baikonur. Progress
Control system.
carving a path towards its preliminary orbit. Three minutes, 48 seconds into the flight. Less than 5 minutes of powered flight remaining.
Vehicle is stable.
Vehicle stabilization is normal. Engine performance is normal.
Sorry, I heard him say 2 minutes of powered flight remaining. But that clearly says 1 minute and less. 40 seconds now.
Your pitch roll parameters are normal.
Yaw, pitch, and roll all reported to be normal. The progress atop the Soyuz booster, traveling a true course so far to its preliminary orbit at the 4.5 minute mark. We're standing by for second stage shutdown and second stage separation.
Booster parameters normal.
And
Repress,
upper stage
reported.
ignition, first stage separation. and skirt separation. The Soyuz uses a hot staging method.
Second stage separation.
And we have confirmation
And
of
there's the
second
fairing.
stage separation, and we have launch shroud jettison. As
They
you can see
jettison
from
those
this
later than they
telemetry
do on the
generated
Soyuz.
animation. Just over 5 minutes into the flight, everything proceeding normally. The Soyuz booster on its third stage now, sending the Progress toward its preliminary orbit. We're about 3.5 minutes away from the end of powered flight.
Third stage Sturgeons.
The Soyuz booster and the Progress more than 100 miles in altitude, more than 200 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, traveling almost 10,000 miles an hour.
All vehicle control parameters.
All vehicle parameters are reported to be normal.
.350 seconds into the flight, all nominal.
6 minutes into the flight, about 2 minutes and 45 seconds of powered flight remaining.
Your pitch
And then
roll
the
parameters
Progress
are
will be
normal.
jettisoned, and we'll open the antennas and solar panels and everything.
All booster parameters are normal.
All booster parameters are reported to be normal. The Soyuz booster on the singular power of its third stage engine.
Stage thrusters.
Progress, as you can see in this animation, now exposed to the environment of space as it heads to its preliminary orbit. 6 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. 2 more minutes of powered flight remaining.
And then, like I said,
vehicle
Progress will
will-
separate and begin its rendezvous with the ISS. The reason the Progress spacecraft take a 2-day rendezvous, whereas Soyuz take
Flight
a
is
half-day
The
rendezvous.
flight is reported to be normal.
Yeah, because,
7 minutes
you
into the
don't
flight.
really
1
want
minute,
people
45
cramming to
seconds
something
left
the
in
size of a
powered flight.
Soyuz for a really long amount of time, whereas the
normal.
Progress,
Engine roll parameters.
it's unmanned. There's no real issue of it taking longer to get up there.
Third
Minute and a
stage
half powered
thrusters
flight
are
remaining,
normal.
roughly.
Third stage engine reported to be operating normally. Everything in good shape so far. Launch time was right on time at 4:20 and 13 seconds a.m. Central Time.
.450 seconds into the flight, all nominal.
7 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight. 1 more minute of powered flight.
All booster
A minute left.
parameters are normal. Third stage thruster operating normally.
Just over 8 minutes into the flight. So far, so good. Third stage engine performing normally.
All control system parameters are normal. Vehicle stable.
The vehicle very stable. About 20 seconds of powered flight remaining.
Okay, 15 seconds.
Standing by just a few seconds from now for third stage shutdown and third stage separation.
Third stage
Progress.
shutdown.
Free flying.
We have confirmation of third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. Standing by now for the deployment of the solar arrays and navigational antennas.
ISM first set activated. Antenna deployment commands of first of group 1 and group 2 issued. All appendages are deployed. Copy that.
Okay, so that was
Parameters
launch
are normal.
Progress 67 on Martin 25.
And you're
Goodbye.
looking at a view of the Russian